Showcase, and it is your guide to entering Japan's food market via trade shows. The objectives today is to make you more familiar with trade shows in Japan, familiarize you with the planning process, determine your product readiness, understanding the shipping and logistics essentials, the customs and regulatory process, go over a case study and some more information with the folks at IMEX, and then go through a question and answer at the end. As Kate mentioned, if you have any questions, you can enter them into the chat, or there will be the opportunity to ask at the end, whichever one you feel is best. So why Japan and why trade shows is our first section, and we're going to go a little bit into Japan's imported food market and the opportunities that are there for U.S. exporters, and then also go through a list of a few of the key trade shows available to you. I'm going backwards. There we go. So Japan's food market. Japan's imported food market is large, sophisticated, and very import reliant. Japan's the fourth largest market for U.S. agricultural exports, valued at over $13 billion a year. Now, that number does include bulk items like grains and things like that. So when it comes to the items that you're more interested in, the consumer-oriented food products, they import over $39 billion in products, and the U.S. is the number one supplier of products in that category, holding a 22% market share, which is about $8.5 billion worth of imports. With regards to the retail sector, the total food and beverage retail sales are $198 billion a year. 45% of sales happen at supermarkets. 29% happens at convenience stores, which is a growing number. That number, if you look a decade ago, is even lower than it was now. And then drugstores and e-commerce now add up to roughly 20% of total food sales. So in terms of the retail sector, the largest player in that market is Aeon. They're the largest retailer in Japan with over 500 general merchandise stores. That'd be more like a super center where you're selling both household goods and grocery. And then they have 2,000 plus supermarkets in the country of Japan. They have a couple of different names that those stores run under, which would be Aeon, Max Value, and Mini Stop. Another large retailer would be Ito Yokado, which is part of 7 & I Holdings, which is the company that owns 7-Eleven, which we will go into more later. There's roughly 130 Ito Yokado stores in Japan. The other would be Life Corporation, which is 300 stores. They have a strong presence mostly in urban areas of Tokyo and Osaka, and then Seiyu with 330 stores. There are some other chains that are not listed here because they are much smaller players. But that would be like Nissan World Delicatessen, and they're more import-oriented chains, and we can provide that information to you later. It might be a great starting point because they focus entirely on imported foods as opposed to being a larger footprint, and oftentimes they will import in smaller volumes if that's what you can supply due to the fewer number of stores. Outside of the major supermarket sector, the next largest sector I mentioned are convenience stores, or what in Japan are called konbini. There's over 50,000 convenience stores in Japan, with 7-Eleven being the largest player in the market. I was just looking before this presentation, and there's something like 21,600 7-Eleven stores in Japan, making it the largest country for 7-Eleven, and roughly 3 times as many stores as in the United States. The 7-Eleven and all the other convenience stores in Japan are slightly different than what you would see in the continental United States. I can't speak to what you folks would see in Guam. I have not been in a convenience store there, but they're generally slightly larger footprint than what you would see in the States, generally a little bit higher end than a lot of convenience stores, with a slightly broader product base. So it's not just convenient snacks and those types of things. You get prepared meals and things of that nature that are grab and go. They also provide many services like bill paying, package delivery, and ATMs. And they, just like anywhere else, they're often open 24/7, and they rotate their products very frequently and feature seasonal and local items. We've really seen a growth in the convenience store sector in Japan over the last decade or 15 years, which is a dynamic of the population base in Japan. Japan's population is aging, And so the working age population is very busy. There's a culture of working very late in Japan as well. That's their working culture is that you stay at the office until your boss leaves. And so oftentimes people will stay at their office until 7 or 8 at night. And then when they're commuting home, they'll often stop by a convenience store to pick up an easy item to eat on the way home. Um, and these convenience stores have really grown to serve that sector. The other emerging sector, of course, is food commerce in the food and beverage. Uh, Unlike in the United States, Japan and Korea and other nations in Asia have really embraced e-commerce for grocery and fresh products, which you don't see as much in the United States, where your e-commerce really dominates the dry good and the hard good and home good sector. Major players there are Rakuten and Amazon Japan. Amazon Japan is owned by the United States and has the benefit that they will warehouse and fulfill your orders in Japan. So you would deal with Amazon, supply them the product, and they would handle the shipping and logistics. Rakuten, which is a Japanese company and the largest e-commerce platform in Japan, would have a bigger footprint. However, they do not handle the logistics for you. So someone would purchase through your Rakuten store, and then you would be responsible for figuring out how to distribute to the customer, whether you have a warehouse facility in Japan or you're shipping in from the point of origin. Other platforms include Yahoo Shopping and Oisix, but they are much smaller footprint than Amazon and Rakuten. In terms of consumer trends shaping Japan's food import market, like I said, there's a high demand for convenience. That's really like the biggest trend in Japan, followed by healthy and premium foods. You're seeing a growth in frozen and single serve items and healthy snacks, kind of similar to how I talked about that the population is aging and there's a smaller young population or even middle age. A lot more Japanese are living a solo lifestyle. There's less common family households, so you will see a lot of singles who are not looking to buy a significant amount of inventory for their kitchen. They're either buying small prepackaged products that are single serve or convenience items, like I said, pre-prepared at the store or frozen and easy to cook. These young consumers are also very influenced by social media and prefer novel and US branded products, and things that go viral on social media will often see a very quick rise among younger Japanese people. There's a market access advantage for US products in Japan as well. Under the US Japan trade agreement, 90% of all US food products enjoy preferential tariffs. Um, and in terms of top US product opportunities, we're seeing processed vegetables, fresh and frozen fruit, pork, beef, tree nuts, cheese, and whiskey. We also know that US based alcohol products such as spirits or whiskeys and wines and beers are doing well in the market as well. So, what are some of the key trade shows that you could explore? The first one would be FoodX in Japan. It's the largest food and beverage show in Japan with a strong focus on imported products. And then you've got Supermarket Trade Show, which is also a very large show, focuses on retail foods and products destined for supermarkets. There's the Japan International Seafood and Technology Expo, as expected, that would focus on seafood and marine products. And then there's the International Hotel and Restaurant Show, which is more of a focus on hospitality and food service, so more on the ingredient side than on the prepackaged good products. Further, there's Fabex, which is also focused on food service and ready-to-eat products. Wine and Gourmet Japan, which of course is focused on wine. There is an organic trade show, and then finally the Japan Meat Industry Fair. So next, we're going to run through a quick guide on how to plan to go to a trade show, talking about timelines, booth setup, and some etiquette items. So 1 year recommended. Of course, these things are all flexible, but 1 year out from the trade show, first thing you should do is research and select the most relevant trade show. I just went through about 10 of them, try and figure out which one has the customer base that you're looking for. If you're targeting restaurants, you don't want to go to the supermarket trade show. You want to find the trade show that's going to best benefit your product and your item. Contact the USDA and WUSADA to figure out if there's going to be a US pavilion at that trade show. They offer a lot of benefits by putting you with other US products. They can help facilitate the booth setup, the design, etc. The next thing you really want to do is understand the eligibility for the product that you want to ship to Japan, because sometimes getting your product eligible, mostly related to labeling or formulation regulations, can take a while. And then determine your objective. Are you looking to sell on your first visit to Japan? Are you looking to develop distributor partnerships? Are you trying to raise your brand awareness? Are you already in Japan, but you want more customers? Or do you just want to investigate the market? Those are all different types of visits. So next, you're looking at 9 to 10 months out. You want to work with whoever you're working with to reserve your booth space and start translating your key information into Japanese. This is especially important when it comes to labels, because there are specific regulations that all labels must be translated into Japanese, but also your booth materials and your product spec sheets should be in Japanese for a Japanese-based show. And then work to identify a Japanese-based agent or importer who can assist you with customs entry specifically for your sampling items. Moving closer, 6 to 8 months out, finalize that packaging and labeling design to be able to ship into the Japanese market. At this time, it's okay to begin reaching out to any contacts you have there, whether it's distributors or retailers or whoever it is, to let them know you're going to be at the show. Hopefully, they will attend and come have a meeting with you. This is where you're going to start putting your booth design together, developing promotional materials and signage, and even depending on what type of product you're selling and the shelf stability of it, consider sending a test shipment to see that the labeling that you've developed and the packaging meets the regulations in Japan, and you're not going to have any issues when it gets closer to the show. As we get closer, you're going to want to confirm that you have all your paperwork in order. You can begin to ship non-perishable items by sea. That often takes a while, so getting that handled is fine. Of course, with more perishable items, you'll be shipping it closer to the date of the show, sometimes via air. You'll start promoting your appearance at the trade show, whether it's via email or social media or however you prefer to do that. Reach out to people to try and determine if they're going to be at the show and schedule meetings during the show. Oftentimes, if you're participating through WUSADA in a trade show, there'll be a designated meeting space that you can meet with people and talk about your items, not just at your booth, but a more comfortable meeting space. And then practice your sales pitch in English and potentially with an interpreter if that's what your goal is, if you don't have someone who can communicate in Japanese. And then finally, final checks and travel arrangements in the last 2 months. Make sure you're shipping your final product samples into the market, your display materials, any signage or booth equipment. Book your travel, hotel, and transportation. Finalize your booth staffing. Oftentimes, people will hire an in-country person to hand out samples or hire an interpreter to be at the booth to help translate your conversations, and then confirm your meetings and review the cultural etiquette associated with shipping to Japan. And then finally, afterwards is also an important part of the trade show. You want to send thank you emails and follow up on leads that you gathered. You want to evaluate the interest you got at the show from distributors and importers, kind of determine what worked and what didn't. Hopefully, you begin discussion on sales agreements, compliance documentation, and shipment terms, and then decide whether or not to rebook at the show for the next year. So what do you need for booth design? Avoid clutter, focus on a clean, open layout, use vertical signage, stuff that is at eye level with product photos and your company logo are more easily identified. If you've just got something low across like a counter at your booth, it's less likely to be seen. We find that images of the product in use draw more interest rather than just a picture of the product. And all product signage and product names should be both in English and Japanese. And then you want to showcase the attributes of your product, showcase the origin and any other certifications that you have, whether it's gluten-free, keto, reef safe, sustainable, farmer owned, producer owned, whatever it is. Stories always sell in Japan. In terms of samples, the one thing about Japan, it's a very orderly place if you haven't been there, and clutter is not really appreciated. So you want a small, clean space for your samples with a sneeze guard and napkins and a trash bin nearby. Everyone should wear gloves if they're handing out samplings. And then often you can consider different sample types, whether it's just a ready-to-eat mini portion, A retail sample, which would be like an example that someone could take away that they could show how it would look on shelf. Or if you're shipping something in bulk, have an example of how that would ship in bulk as well. It's great to have a company intro flyer, whether it's a specific product related or not, with your logo, your origin story, the certifications you have, your export history, and your contact information. And then in terms of translated material, you'll want to have a one-page product sheet with the product name, the description, the unique selling proposition, ingredients, allergen information, shelf life, pack sizes, minimum orders. Essentially, this is a spec sheet about how you're willing or can do business with folks in Japan. So the next one I want to talk about real quick is business card and just general etiquette for doing business in Japan. So in terms, business cards are very important to Japanese culture and Japanese business culture. You want to make sure you bring enough cards, bring at least 100. They should be double-sided, one in English and one in not Spanish, Japanese. Spanish would not be very useful. And then you want to keep your cards neatly stored in a card holder, not just in your pocket. You don't want to have them with bent corners or frayed edges or smudges. Um, in Japan, the culture, the business card is a representation of the business and the respect you have for the business. And so keeping those cards organized and looking nice is important. And it's the same when you're giving and receiving business cards. So when you are presenting a business card, it should be pointed so that the receiver can read it, and you would deliver it with two hands in a respectful manner. And you offer it slowly and give it to them before you really start your conversation. It's not one of those, oh, do you want a card? And you pull it out from your shirt pocket. That's just not the practice in Japan. And similarly, you should act with respect and grace towards someone presenting you with a business card. A slight bow as a thank you is often in order. You would accept it, read it thoroughly to understand who you're talking to, and then treat it respectfully as you put it away. Similarly, you don't want to just stash it in your pocket. You don't want to wave it around while you're talking. You don't want to take notes on it. It's a very respectful item that should be treated that way. And if you don't follow that etiquette, it can sometimes put negotiations on the wrong foot. Just generally speaking, business in Japan is very formal in that manner. And then in terms of follow-up etiquette, it's always good to follow up in 3 to 5 business days after the show if you've had discussions with someone using either email or a letter. That's a little more olden days, but it's very formal in Japan, and sometimes that written note can be appreciated. Be sure to include a thank you, your product information, and anything that you promised. Avoid aggressive sales pitches. Use honorific language when writing to people in Japan. It's very common it's preferred to use last names with the appropriate title with the person. First names are, especially early on in a relationship, are not recommended to be used. And then if you don't receive a reply, follow up once more after 1 or 2 weeks. A few other tips that we've gotten over the years in Japan in terms of business is one thing that we've heard often is Americans tend to talk too much, and that not every moment has to be filled with conversation, and so it's okay to let things linger. Um, like I said, it's very formal, so you will often get people who bow to you, although Japanese will more often offer a handshake to someone from a Western culture, but a slight bow is always appreciated as kind of a cultural touchstone, and that everything should be done with grace and respect, and that's just kind of how it's handled. And then I'll turn quickly to product readiness and understanding what you have to do to get into the Japanese market. So first, understanding the buyer product fit. Oftentimes, things that succeed in Japan are a familiar format with a unique twist, a US style cookie with more culturally appropriate flavors that are adapted to local taste and portion size and packaging. Like I mentioned, oftentimes things are for convenience or single serve or few servings, and that like a large Kano pack that you would see in the United States is not necessarily preferable packaging when you're shipping to Japan. And shelf stability is also valued. Um, in terms of packaging, you want it to be visually appealing, high quality packaging with minimal clutter. Japanese language labels are required. That's not a nice to have. Like I said, smaller packaging sizes and clear date and allergen marking is also required. Certifications and claims are important. Buyers will often ask you for your food safety plans, any certifications you have, such as USDA organic or non-GMO, and if you have any third-party lab testing for adulterants or things of that nature. And then when it comes to pricing and positioning, one thing that, once again, is not necessarily uh, preferred is aggressive sales pitches in Japan. Things are slower in the terms of negotiations, but it's important to know retail pricing, your FOB or CIF costs, where the product fits in the market, and the type of store you're targeting, whether it's convenience, supermarket, or department store. The other thing that's important to understand about Japanese business negotiations is oftentimes they will not come to a decision as quickly as you would see in a normal American market. Discussions are very collaborative and things have to work through the business structure there, where things are also very hierarchical. So people will offer their opinion up the chain of command, and eventually someone will come to a decision, but it will take more time often than when you're dealing in the United States. Um, Nutritional labeling for Japan is a requirement. It's governed by the Food Labeling Act. It's mandatory for all prepackaged products. If you're shipping fruits or fresh vegetables, that's a different situation. Everything must be translated to Japanese, and I won't go into all the details here in terms of what you need, but it's important to know that a US compliant food label is generally speaking not compliant with Japanese regulations, and it will need to be customized. And so that's important to know, is that if you have a US compliant label, you are not, generally speaking, ready to ship to Japan, and that a missing translation or incorrect decimal rounding can result in label rejection. So it's important also, if you have a Japan compliant label, to have an example at the trade show you can show people. And then finally, tips for working with a translator or a printer when it comes to your printed documents for the show or your labeling. We really recommend avoid using free machine translation like Google Translate or some of the AI-powered translators now, especially for legal and technical items. It's very likely they would come with an error. Now, that could be a preliminary translation, and if you know someone who's a native Japanese speaker, then you could maybe make adjustments. But it's very important that you work with an actual Japanese language translator so that you can get these items right. The things that we recommend, well, things that are required are food nutritional facts, ingredients lists, and allergens, and then recommended business cards, flyers, catalogs, and signage. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Betsy and Kate to go through their slides.
All right, thank you, Will. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen then. So you can all see it now. Yeah, so I'm Betsy Riggs. I'm with IMEX Management. We are organizers of USA pavilions at many trade shows around the world. I specifically work, and Kate, my colleague here, we specifically work on the food and bev shows. We do about 12 globally each year. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what we do and how we can support you specifically at FoodX. This is the show that we organize, or the USA Pavilion that we organize in Japan. But certainly I know Will mentioned a couple of other shows. If you're interested in those, we're happy to connect you with those organizers as well. So today I'm just going to introduce our team, talk a little bit about being in the USA Pavilion at FoodX, shipping to FoodX, and we have with us today also our colleague Denise from Win Expo. They are our official freight forwarder for this and really all the food shows that we do, who's kindly joined us today in case there are some questions that I'm unable to answer. And then I'll turn it over to my colleague Kate, who'll just talk about results from FoodX in 2025 and also the application process in case you'd like to exhibit with us, which of course we hope you do. So I'm Betsy Riggs. I would say my primary role with IMEX is operations manager for food and beverage. So I organize the pavilion. I'm kind of from now until about December is kind of our sales process. And once we hit operations, I'm kind of your main contact to make sure you have everything you need for the show. And then my colleague Kate, who's with me here today, her primary role is international sales manager. She works mostly with directly with companies and departments of ag. And then we have Eric Halston, our Chief Commercial Officer, and Claire Groh, our Chief Operating Officer. If you were with us at FoodX on 2025, they were both there. You probably have met them. They're also co-owners of our company. So here on the right is just like a general picture of the USA Pavilion, and what you see in the front there is the USA Pavilion Lounge from this year. And in order to be in the USA Pavilion, you need to have a food or agricultural product, and it has to have more than 50% US ingredients, exclusive of water and packaging. That's the main, requirement for being in the USA Pavilion. As I mentioned, we're really with you through the whole process, um, uh, supporting you from the minute we kick off operations. FoodX start is in March, so we kick it off in about December is when we kind of launch our operations. We send out periodic bulletins to make sure that you're aware of deadlines and next things you need to do. And then, of course, we're on site from setup day, which is the day before the show starts, and then throughout the show. And with us is our partner, USDA. They're also present throughout the show, always there to help if you have, like specifically questions about the market, for example. Some other benefits of being in the USA Pavilion is a prime location at the show. We work hard to negotiate, the best location that we can. Being under the USA banner, having access to the USA Pavilion Lounge. As I said, USDA is there throughout. They're very present at this show. And then we also have space for meetings or coffee and water. It's a nice gathering space as well. Cooking demonstration. This can look different from year to year depending on the space that we have, but like this picture to the right here is the group from Guam that was here in 2025, took advantage of this, and really any exhibitor can take advantage of it. You have a booth, but then this participating in the cooking demonstration is just kind of another touch point with visitors to highlight your products. And then USDA always does a market briefing during the show. During setup day, they'll offer a reception. This year we had over 150 people come to the USA Pavilion on the first night after the show. And then SRTG support, of course, Wasada has already secured booths there, so they'll be very present at the show, and I'm sure they have talked to you before and will talk to you later about all the things they can do to support you while there. We as organizers negotiate a hotel room or hotel block for our exhibitors. And then we have a couple of different exhibit options, which my colleague Kate will talk about. Scheme A or B are two different options you can go with. And then you will be included in the show directory, but also we offer a USA Pavilion directory. It's an online directory, so you can share it with your customers, and also USDA uses it to invite people to come to the pavilion. The show offers a new product showcase. So if you have a new product, it's something that can be displayed also outside of the pavilion, kind of bringing people in to the USA Pavilion. And then, as I mentioned, we work with our freight forwarder, Win Expo, who is very hands-on, can answer a lot of questions, and really can help you step by step in terms of getting your samples to the show. We provide detailed instructions for shipping with document templates, and those are usually ready about end of December, early January. And again, here is Denise's information. If you have questions even before the show, before we get that out to you, and you want to start planning, I know she's always very happy to answer questions either before or during kind of the planning process. Just a few things to note is we do send products as display only. This we have found is sort of the easiest way to get products to the show. So they're not for resale. They're not screaming that you're sampling them, but it is certainly understood that they're sent for display only, but completely fine if someone takes one and wants to try it or take a product with them. And again, because they're sent this way, the products need to be discarded after the show in bins that are available during at the end of the show. And then non-food products like literature, promotional items need to be sent separately. And then we do ask that you don't send serving supplies. There's like a equivalent of a dollar store. I think it's 100 yen store within walking distance of the show. So really, you'll be able to get all of those on site if needed. And then just in terms of timeline, again, the instructions would come out end of December, beginning of January, and then about mid to late January, we would ask that you provide the commercial invoice, ingredient list, and manufacturing flow chart to Win Expo so that they can review everything and make sure, it's as they need it and they don't have any questions. If you have meat and dairy, those would require health certificates. If it's applicable, the health certificates are due 5 days prior to the shipping deadline, and the original health certificates due 1 day before shipping deadline. And then the freight is due in mid-February for air shipment consolidation. The consolidation points are in California, and pickup from door is possible. Again, if you have specific questions about shipping, maybe you can either put them in the chat or we can take those at the end. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Kate.
Thank you, Betsy. So here we have a picture of FoodX from last year on the right. You can see the USA Pavilion had a lot of traffic, and these booths are in a prime visibility area to showcase for potential buyers. So FoodX is the largest trade show in Asia Pacific. There were 72,151 visitors from the last edition. There were 2,930 exhibitors. We had visitors from 78 countries and regions, and then there were over 180 daily booth visitors. Next slide. So here you can see the floor plan on the right, and I'll go over that in a bit. But the USA Pavilion 2025 results, there were around 70 total exhibitors. There were 289 serious contacts made, 130K in on-site sales, and then 12 million on-site and projected sales. So as you can see on the right here, this is the USA Pavilion floor plan from the most recent FoodX. On the bottom right, you'll see where USADA was located, which had prime visibility near the entrance. If you choose to book directly through IMEX, we can also assist in helping you book a booth with a prime location. Next slide. So how to participate in the USA Pavilion. So FoodX 2026 is March 10th through the 13th in Tokyo. Here you'll see a link for the USA Pavilion application. Each booth is 9 square meters as a minimum. When applying, you'll choose how many booths you'd like and the booth type, and I'll go over the types in a bit. Booth placement is assigned in order of the application submission, so it's first come, first served. Here you'll see the early rates that are valid until September 19th. So with Scheme A, it's $8,595, and this includes furniture. For Scheme B, it's $7,595, and this is just the walls and carpet only. And then the corner upgrade is $750. And on the right, you can see how the standard rates compare to the early rates. You may also be eligible to book through USADA at potentially lower rates and or qualify for their Fund Match program. I know there was a webinar last week covering the details, but Kate from USADA can answer any questions you might have about that. Next slide. On the left, you'll see a picture of an example of our Scheme A booths, which you can see includes furniture. On the right here, you'll see 2 companies from Guam that booked for the last edition of FoodX. We were really happy to have them participating, and we're excited to book more. We're excited to book more companies from Guam for this year's edition.
All right. Thank you, Kate. That concludes our presentation, so I'll turn it back over to you, Will.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll actually flip it over to Kate at this point to go through some of the upcoming events that USADA has available for its members.
Yes. Hi, everyone. And I'm happy to see some friendly names here that I've been working with. I'm happy all could make it to this. And I think most of you are already registered for this outbound trade mission to Tokyo. That filled up very, very quickly, which is really excited. And same with the Japan outbound trade mission. So we're excited that those got filled up, and there's a lot of Guam and CNMI participation in those. And if you still have any questions about your fun match, and we'll have this next slide in a second, but with excuse me, with the upcoming focus in Japan, I know that you guys are all registered. So if you are still working on your fun match application, if you need assistance, please schedule with me. I'm here to help you navigate all of that. And we do have some events outside of Japan as well coming up, just for your radar. We have the Korea Consumer Oriented Outbound Mission to Seoul. That's coming up this November. The deadline is very soon, so if that's something, I would jump on that. And then the China Pet Food International Fair is coming up in August. We also have the Alaska and Hawaii Floriculture Inbound Mission, which might be something to explore, some Guam companies with floriculture. So July 27th to August 2nd. Then additionally, we have the Latin American Produce Inbound Mission to Idaho and Nevada, which is a little bit heavier a lift for y'all. And then Canada as well is coming up, the Specialty Food Promotion in Western Canada. I know that you're mostly all focused in Japan and some different Asian countries exporting there, so some of these may be a little irrelevant, but just for your radar. We do have the Taiwan Consumer-Oriented Outbound Mission to Taipei coming up. That deadline's in August 31st, so if you do want to explore Taiwan, we can talk about that. Additionally, the Mexico Outbound Trade Mission, deadline coming up September 22nd. Specialty Food inbound to Colorado and Idaho. I'll actually be attending that one. That's coming up October 10th. And then we have our Europe inbound mission to Colorado and New Mexico, and that's the same deadline as the inbound to Idaho and Colorado. So we're very busy over here, and it's a lot to take in. So just let me know if you want to explore any of these options outside of Japan as well, and we can figure out a plan for you.
So with that, the one thing I'd like to remind everyone about is that following this webinar, someone from USADA will be sending out the presentation, but also there'll be another link in that email for one-on-one consultations with the staff here at Bryant Christie, and then potentially someone from USADA may join depending on the schedule, where if you've got individual questions about your company or the trade show or any of the activities at USADA, you can set up a 30-minute meeting with us. If you're not comfortable asking here in the public sector, that's perfectly fine. We'll be sending that link out with a calendar where you can select the times. I think I might need to revise the original calendar. I think it's a little too early for some of you folks in Guam, so we'll be working with USADA to get some better times on there for you so that it's not too early in the morning. But that was the one thing I'd like to remind everyone about, is that that'll be going out after this presentation sometime today or tomorrow. With that, I'd open the floor to any questions. If anyone has any questions, we got for myself, for USADA, for the folks at IMEX, any questions are welcome.
All righty. Nothing? You guys we have 20 minutes. Do you have any questions at all? Are you ready to hop off and get your day started?
Hi, Kate. Hi, Will. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yes.
So this is Jennifer with the Guam Economic Development Authority, and I was wondering if you can just touch more upon, the customs part, the shipping, and is there any other, regulations in terms of whether you ship the products or you bring in the products through, your check-in luggage or your carry-on? Can you just speak a little bit more about that process?
Okay, that would be me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Denise is the expert.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Denise.
Denise.
Yes. So just to go back to what Will said, and also about having to translate labels and all. Everything that Will presented is probably applicable to formal entry, but after you get your client and then you go through that process. As far as the trade show, there's exemptions where we don't have to translate the labels. What we need would be your ingredient list and manufacturing process. And there are strict deadlines that we have to meet early to mid January, and the sooner the better. And we submit it to customs. Of course, these custom brokers are responsible for all the shipments for the show, so we want to get ours in the queue first. Even though we submit it early January, we might not get a reply or feedback until end of January, even close to shipping out. So, but because I've been doing this for over 22 years for this show, I'm pretty familiar with what is needed and what's not. The one thing that might scare people off is the word display status only. And the reason why we do that is there's two type of entry: formal entry, which is for sampling, as it goes through the same process as a commercial shipment. And then the other one is display status only, and that's only for trade show shipments. And they allow you to bring samples in for display only, and you're not supposed to pass it out to the public. But we know that it's not being policed for the last 20-something years. So we're comfortable to say that you can display it on your countertop and let people just take it as they go on their own. Just don't stand in the middle of the aisle with a tray and ask them to take it, because then when the official sees that, then they see that you're purposely passing them out. But if someone take it from your counter, then you can't run after them, pretty much. So that's how we get around the display status. And not only does it allow us to bypass customs easily, or easier, it's not easily, it does take about 2 to 3 weeks still. But it also, sorry, I lost my chance of thought. The display status, it also alleviates some paperwork, not all. You still have to provide the labels and manufacturing process, but they don't dissect it as much. For formal entry, the process, it might take longer to clear custom, and there's no guarantee when it's going to clear. And by the time the show comes around, and we don't clear, we have then to convert it to display status, and there will be more charges that applies to convert it as well. So in the past, we would try the formal entry and it incurred additional costs to exhibitors, and we just tell them, you know what, just go straight to display. We know that from past history that they're not going to police it, and you're responsible to throw away yourself. No one's going to come by your booth to collect for destruction. So then we just go straight to display status only. And the cost is still high. It's not going to be that, it's not going to be, what you say, cheap, but it's be more cost effective than had you gone through the formal channel. Because the formal channel, each product that you want to sample, they charge 50,000 yen additional for each HS code. So it adds up. And for a minimum shipment going to the show, if it was coming from the out of the consolidation warehouse in LA, you're looking at roughly about $1,600 plus duties and taxes. And that's for the display status only. And even though we say it's a consolidation, we are not clearing everything as one entry for the pavilion. Every shipment still has to go through its own formality. The only reason why we do a consolidation, so that way all the US cargo goes in the same time and they inspect us at the same time. It's just easier for them versus 20 shipments being sent separately, and we kind of get locked in the shuffle a bit and get into the queue. So going through the consolidation, we have more control on the inspection.
Thank you, Denise. I think it's, Kate, I know you had mentioned, I think maybe important to know, like with Fun Match, if they.
That's exactly, yeah, thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and just for everyone's like who is utilizing FundMatch for shipping and packaging and all of that. So WUSADA's policy is that we can cover up to half of the cost of the shipping expenses, but we can't cover if you're going to be adding additional items to luggage, and that's not an eligible expense. So to get the shipping costs covered, you do need to ship with someone like Denise, and we can cover up to 50% of that cost. We've heard it's expensive, so we're here to help with that. Yeah, and then I see two other hands up here. It looks like Kiyoshi. If we want to pivot to another question, or maybe you got inspired by what was just being spoke about.
Yeah, I just want, I didn't know if this question is directed more toward WUSADA or Denise. Previously on the SBA State Trade Expansion Program, we did ingredients kind of verification for Japan through U.S. Commercial Service Hawaii. So I didn't know, do you guys recommend we go through Denise or WUSADA if we had to vet out the ingredients list in food products? Is the first question. And also, do we need to go through that same vetting process for like say health and beauty products, anything that's, you know, consumer, I guess, worn?
For this show, I like to answer that question. For the ingredients, yes, submit it so that way we submit it to our broker to vet it out. Even if you already import it into the country, we still have to start over with the broker for the show. They can't take a past history and apply that to your current shipment. So everything is as if it's going to be treated as if it's the first time going into the country. As far as the beauty products, I'm glad you said that because this show has only a permit for food products. In fact, I'm not confirmed if they issue a permit yet because in recent years, JMA, for this show, JMA, the show management is acting as the importer. And customs have a bit of conflict with JMA in the past because they know that JMA is not being very strict with exhibitors because technically all these products have to be collected for destruction and someone should be monitoring it, but it's not very strictly monitored. So in recent years, they've been having a lot of it, a bit of a conflict in the debate on how to be handled, and the permit for the show gets really delayed into almost at the end right now. Well, that's the experience for the last 2 years. As for this year, I don't know. I don't want to have any updates until December roll around. And that's when I'm going to ask if there's any changes with the restrictions. And so what I'm telling you right now is based on our history of how we've been importing, but things might change in December. I don't anticipate any because JMA always, end up being able to negotiate exceptions for the exhibitors. As far as the pharmaceutical, so like I said, this show has only a food import permit. So any beauty products is considered as pharmaceutical. So we will not be able to send it in with JMA being the importer.
Sorry, Denise. I guess I should have phrased it more as a general question, and just knowing that WUSADA has, like, say, outbound trade missions to Japan. So I didn't know if the same vetting process for, say, an organic hand cream made in the CNMI should get vetted out on an ingredients list before they attend an outbound trade mission or an in-store demonstration. My apologies for not phrasing it beyond a food expo.
No worries. I guess, Kate.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I think, Kiyoshi, that's something that we'll have to look further into as we're working with that. And Hayden, I know you're on the call too. I don't know if you have any insight to that. But I can definitely get to the bottom of that and figure out the best resource and who to work for with the vetting process as we continue to develop relationships over there. And so just specifically,
sorry, Kate.
Oh, I would love to hear from your experience.
So from my experience, for that, we did have someone who wanted to send some chapsticks for giveaway, and if it's a trade mission, most people don't really want to spend using a formal freight forwarder to send because it's going to be more costly. So what they've done in the past is they courier it to their hotel, and there is a quantity restriction for as personal consumption. For instance, chapsticks, you can send 20 as quantity. So some exhibitors send it in multiple packages. The first couple of shipments went through, they sent 20 cases. Then the following shipments, when FedEx caught on, they actually opened up and count the individual chapsticks and allow only 20 chapsticks in and not 20 cases in. So just that's something that you want to clarify with FedEx if you were to use a courier to ship, and make sure that, because the people who you call here at the US end are not the same people in Japan who know the regulations in and out. So the FedEx US might say, yes, we can get it, but no, it might get stuck in customs. And especially if it's a trade mission, you don't have an actual importer unless USDA or the embassy acts as an importer. But in my past experience, the embassy overseas in almost every country cannot do anything once your freight is stuck except Dubai.
Okay. And what's coming up for me too right now, just in this topic, we do have our in-country partners. So that could be a good conversation, Kiyoshi, to reach out and really get a definitive answer around some of that as we continue to do that. So I'll be following up with you, and then we can relay that out to the companies as well. And thank you, Denise, for all your expertise. And then we have Marie. I'm glad to see you on the call. Marie, you have a question?
Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I know this is just in regards to samples. So we attended FoodX in the past with this year, but because we do cookies, we didn't have like a large amount. So I know by Denise saying getting a freight forwarder, you consolidate in California, right, for these things. So obviously coming from Guam, would we have to work those details out for a freight forwarder from Guam to Japan?
No,
how will we go about?
I do have
Or
agents in Guam that we can arrange picked up from door and send, or you can send it to their warehouse and we'll arrange it from there. However, as mentioned earlier, the consolidation is just a convenience for customs. It's not really going to save you any money by going through the consolidation, because every shipment is still going to be treated as an individual shipment. It has to go through customs by itself. So a lot of people, they still want to incur that additional cost and send it to us because they want to go with the U.S. consolidation and have it being inspected at the same time. Otherwise, we can arrange a pickup from your door and send it directly from Guam.
Okay. And then with our quantities, I do cookies, so we have obviously smaller volumes to carry. So putting it in our suitcase would not be acceptable if we went through all of the channels of information, ingredient listing, manufacturing practices, all of that. We still would have to go through a freight forwarder.
No, if you want to hand carry, we've had exhibitors hand carry before with no issues, and I can't really say now because I haven't been there since COVID. So I don't know how it is when you exit customs anymore because I haven't been myself. But in the past, I've exited customs, they didn't really X-ray or screen your bags again. And we have exhibitors hand carrying luggages of products samples in. So, but if you want to be more thorough, then I would say bring along packing list, ingredient list, and manufacturing process, and also your show registration confirmation. So that way, if you get stopped, then you can go through customs yourself and present it.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. And then we have a question in the chat from Peter. Hi, Peter. It says display should be labeled translated. Are there label rules, or English is okay? Maybe no label, just brand. And are you, Peter, I don't know if you want to hop off mic and clarify your question too if we don't get it quite right. But I think you're asking that the label should be translated into Japanese, and then what label specifications there are. So, yeah, hi, Peter.
Yes, hi. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just put that in. We were talking about labels, so I just wanted to say for a sample or for a display, I should say, not a sample. So for a display, just a brand picture is okay, or should it have some more information on it?
So you're speaking for the display only products that you're
I can
bringing-
jump
Yeah.
back in, Kate.
Yeah, that would be great.
So for the labels, there's no requirements for the show. You can just send it as
Okay.
your retail packages, but you do have to have some kind of label so that way they open it up and inspect and they know what it is. Where I had situations before where sodas, the private labels, they'd send just a can, aluminum can with no labels. The customs accepted a copy via email just to show what is inside that can. So it really depends on which inspector you get, but for sure you don't have to translate those labels to Japanese for the show. You just need to present the commercial invoice and manufacturing process. And sometimes when they don't understand what the product is, because you still have to fill out the HS code. And if they don't understand what it is, then they ask for you to send them a copy of a label. So I always recommend for exhibitors to have your copy of your labels ready. If I ask for it, please be ready to present it. But that's pretty much it. They don't really require anything else. But just understand that even though you fill out the commercial invoice and have the HS code, the HS code will pretty much tells people what category is in. The Japanese customs, they have to translate it to understand what the product is. If they've never eaten an Oreo before, they wouldn't know that's a cookie. So please specify if it's a cookie, if it's a candy, if it's a soda, be more specific in your description and use generic terms where they just copy and paste into their system and it translates for them.
Okay.